I was hearing your testimony. I listened to it a little bit before we had this interview, and I found it kind of interesting. Like, you didn't have TVs and movies much as part of your life growing up, but you had this affinity to kind of go towards that. What was the appeal in your mind? Why did you think you gravitated towards that movie making experience?
I think in my parents' defense, they understood that there was a lot of unholy things that were probably coming out of Hollywood. Like, they had been exposed to it enough to know, okay, these are not good. We don't want to raise our kids with these kind of ideals, but they didn't really know the why. They didn't explain. There was no sort of like, well, this is really the reason why. It was just kind of a no. And I think there was a bit of a danger in that area when we do that without really giving the reasons, or kind of like at least expounding upon that in a way that's like, here's the real reasons why I believe you shouldn't get involved in that. And to be honest, when I got to college, I was a real believer in God. Like, there was never a moment in my life. My dad did an excellent job instilling religion in me. And just like, Proverbs tells us, train up a child in the way that he should go. And when he's old, he will never depart from it. That was my experience. My parents instilled that in my mind to the point where I did not question it. So I think my intentions of going to Hollywood were, I would almost say, kind of more innocent. Like, I just wanted to maybe I can go down there and put Adventism on the map. Maybe I can use, creative ways to really share the gospel with the world. But it was 6 months down the road. I mean, I'm doing drugs and, could care less about God. So,
you didn't know how far that road would take you.
Not at all.
And I think one thing you said that's really interesting and important is a lot of times we say no, but there's not a good enough reason. And then there's no buy-in. When you're young, you are just a mirror of your parents, right? I want to be like dad. I want to be like mom, and all these things. But then once you get to these certain ages, you don't have a real reason behind why you're doing certain things. Then you start to question all of that. And if you haven't had that experience of learning for yourself too is super important. Then it's like, well, was it really that big of a deal? Maybe I'll try it out. Maybe I'll share Adventism there. I'll be a good influence in these circles. Should we be trying to go into these situations thinking that we can convert people?
So there's a lot of young kids right now in a lot of our schools that are being trained to learn how to use the arts, and they have the greatest of intentions. I've talked to many of these kids. I really want to go down there and make a change for God. And, they'll throw out all the things like, well, Daniel, he lived in the most occultic civilization, right? And he was able to remain faithful. Yeah, but Daniel didn't really choose to go to Babylon. Daniel was forced to go to Babylon. And is it possible to remain true? Yes, I do believe that. I really do. But here's the kind of where it went awry for me. I placed myself on the devil's ground. Yeah. When I went down there, I had good intentions. I read my Bible. I went to church, and my departure was starting to happen in college, and I kind of was getting mixed up in the wrong crowd. So I'm sure a lot of that contributed. By the time I got down there to Los Angeles, it was a real easy sail for me. And I saw all these people with fame and fortune, and that's the kind of interesting thing about LA. I'm sure you have story after story. You can rub shoulders with these very famous people. I mean, within one or two people, I was meeting people that I was watching on TV, and it was like you can become their friends.
Yeah.
So I think the carrot gets dangled in front of you. You too can have this, and then all of a sudden, my life and focus became, well, I want what they want. And the more that I pursued it, the more people that I went around, it was just like I found broken hearts and brokenness, and just it seemed like the higher up the food chain that you got, what everyone was aiming at, the more that they were broken. And it really perplexed me, because I met tons of people that had what I was pursuing, yet they seemed like the most, unhappy people.
It's interesting you say that, because I witnessed the same thing. And for people who don't know, I also was living in Los Angeles for 13 years and kind of came into it with the same intentions of I didn't have God. I wasn't an SDA. It wasn't really a God focus as much as it was for like, I wanted to capture the world by the horns. And I think part of the reason why we wanted to have this program and kind of talk together is we understand and have witnessed and experienced how many other young people out there have this dream, have this goal that they think, let's say the city of angels, Los Angeles.
Yeah, lost angels.
Right. And
Yeah.
they become, you learn after time, it's fallen angels. And the scariest thing that can happen for any younger people or parents that are listening that have children that are, kind of in the mold of wanting to pursue these things is you're entering into a system that fundamentally changes you. And when you look at, let's say, you go into the Bible and you look at the lines of Cain and Seth, or when you go in and you see the ancient Israelites as they start to intermingle with the Gentiles, there's only one direction generally that it goes, is you come farther away from God.
Yeah.
And the scariest thing that I saw is that the more that people achieved or the success as the world defines it that they had, the less that they had this need for God, it seemed like. And they entered into this space of self-reliance. And then you start down this slippery slope because you don't have this rock to build on. And I know there's a lot of young people out there now that think fame, fortune, being around celebrities, being at the hottest nightlife spots, all of these things is success. And I think part of what we're going to talk about today is how not only social media, but mainstream media in the form of television and movies is reinforcing this ideology that you need to be the biggest star, the brightest star,
Yeah.
and that you need to give up everything in the pursuit of these things. Now, your angle was more from Hollywood movies. My angle was more from the real estate and financial side. But what we saw was kind of the same system.
Right.
And I find that if we're trying to help people understand, especially young people, the dangers of these things, is really trying to lay out that even though it looks glamorous, I asked you yesterday, what is Hollywood Boulevard really like in comparison to what it looks like from the outside? What was your experience?
It stinks. It smells. It's dirty, and Hollywood has always been a excellent at showing only the smoke and mirrors. They the right lighting, the right perspective, the right makeup will change things. The right facade on the buildings, and so
Yeah.
I think there's this over glamorized view of it. And when you get there, I think everybody's shocked. Like, it's smoggy and it's
Yeah.
nasty.
It's
and
not nice.
Yeah, it's not nice, and the people aren't nice, and so there is this really interesting, deep-seated thing that what you see is not always what's behind the walls.
And you moved out there at what age?
I was almost 19, 20 years old.
Okay. And so you move out there at 19 and 20, and what's your life like when you get there?
I was very innocent. I came from a broken home. My experience was beginning to be rocky, but I was still a good kid. I had good intentions. I believed that this is maybe something that I can do that's good. And really quick, really fast, I just found the wrong people, the wrong parties. And you kind of get in this idea of, well, it's who you know, right? That's how Hollywood works. It's not really, your skills have a little bit to do with it, but it's all, you get in the right positions and the right places. And so then your existence becomes, well, I need to get to the right places and hang out with the right people. And there's a lot of dark corners in that city. And I quickly found quite a few of those and really lost my way very fast. I stopped talking to my family, stopped talking to my friends, stopped reading my Bible, stopped surrounding myself with anything that had anything to do with God. And, that is the number one recipe for the devil stepping in and saying, I'll show you a different way.
Yeah.
They
say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And going back to what you said, when you put yourself in these situations, we can't go on the devil's ground unless God specifically asks us to go in this to minister to this group of people. If we go just, I know a pastor, he said, I'm going to go convert the Hell's Angels. And so he went, put on the jacket, the everything, started riding bikes, and he became a Hell's Angel.
You bring up an excellent point that I think I want to hang on for just a second.
because I try to teach this to a lot of young people, especially if they're involved in the arts, because they're you're confronting them with, well, I've been drawing since I was a kid and I've wanted to do this, and now you're telling me that it's wrong. And I say, wait. It doesn't matter what I believe. Honestly, I can give you my perspective and my experience. It always matters only what God believes. Did you ask God if that's what you want, if he wants you to do? Right. And I think when you frame it like that, God is waiting to be our God. He's waiting for us to come to him and say, you know what, God, I would like to go and reach the people of Hollywood. Do I think that they need to be reached? Absolutely. But let God make that choice. And when you make that choice, if you said, hey, God, I believe that I want to make a movie and I want to win the world with that movie, right? Well, it takes money to make a movie. Let's say you go to God and you say, God, if you give me the money, I know that it comes from you. And let's just hypothetically say the devil's watching this, right? Yeah. And the devil goes, well, he just asked for $2 million, so I'm going to give him $2 million. So he thinks that it came from God. Who's stronger, God or the devil? You won't get that money if you put that decision in God's hands. And God doesn't want you to do that because it'll destroy your life. Then that check will be lost, broken. You won't get it. You can't cash it. It won't happen because the glory's in God's hands. Where we get ourselves in danger is when we say, I'm going to go and do this. I want to do this for God. But make sure that you ask God, is that what he wants you to do?
I think that's really important. One of the things I think some people fall into the trap of is asking like Balaam. You know, they're asking, hey, God, is it okay if I go and curse the Israelites?
Right.
You know the answer right away. It's like, should I be doing this and this and this? And you know it's not okay, but you ask God anyways. And unfortunately, God doesn't force anyone. And so if they ask enough, he lets you do those things and he allows Satan to go and give you what you're looking for. And Balaam, in the end, he went to do what he wanted to do. And all along the way, God was trying to stop him, even his donkey talking to him. And he was so determined on what he was going to do. And he thought it was actually right because he asked God enough times and he convinced himself that this is okay, that he talked right back to his donkey like it was okay, like nothing was happening. And we can do that to ourselves where we're saying, God gave me this skill, like you said, but that doesn't necessarily mean that God wants you to use that skill in that way, or even that skill at all. Let's say, this is just very hypothetical. You grew up in a drug cartel and you're very good at making good, clean drugs. Right. I'm sorry, but maybe all your skills aren't useful anymore and you'll have to learn some new skills.
Yeah, maybe you need to work with herbal things.
There we go.
And you can apply those same kind of skills, but they may not be in the same way.
And we really need to ask God and then not be still pushing and anticipating our plan on top of that.
And this is, I believe, what I think happened in my experience. My father, I can remember the last few conversations before I moved, was very adamant about this is not a good idea. This will not end well, and this is not my desire for you to do this. And those ended up in hangups, and I'm going to do what I want to do. And 6 months down the road, I tossed God out the window.
Yeah.
And you, in your testimonies, talked about a time when you were in Las Vegas. So you still, let's say you tossed it out the window, but you still had those principles in there somewhere, right? And so you're looking around the crowd, and what are you thinking as you're witnessing what's before you in Las Vegas?
Like you brought up MacKenzie, I think God allows us sometimes, if we press him, he has to step back and say, fine, you know what? Yeah. Go and taste and test and see, right? And that's the amazing, loving picture that God has for us. It's like he's willing to let us, if that's, everybody gets in the end what you choose, right? And that's the path that I chose. Yeah. And so those thoughts were in my mind. And, I'm in Vegas on paint chips and glue in the middle of the hottest clubs and sitting there going, is this what fallen humanity has come to? Yeah. And, I think we talked a little bit about this off camera and had those very similar kind of almost thoughts, not maybe necessarily about God, but.
Yeah, we did. And it's funny you guys talk about how, God sometimes keeps some stuff from us. And I was finding in Los Angeles, I would have some huge real estate deals, 50, 60, $70 million deals, and they would never quite go through. And I was in the moment be so frustrated because I'm like, I'm doing everything right. I've got the right pieces, a great property, the right people are all together, but it's just not happening. And I've seen in retrospect how much danger I was in, because if you had flooded me with some of these, the checks that come along with these things, my whole life would have changed, because I was a frequent visitor of Las Vegas. As I was telling you guys, I used to be a semi-professional gambler, would teach people how to play craps and blackjacks and sports gambling and all these things. And I'd be in those same clubs, in the same parties, in the biggest nights, and would find myself feeling sad, depressed almost. And you have everything that the world is taught you to aim for and give everything up to achieve. And I saw, like, is this it? Is this
You reached a limit.
Yeah, is this the pinnacle? Is this what everyone's chasing? And even though I didn't have the private planes or the private islands, I'm at the same table as the guys that did. And they're doing the same things that I'm doing.
Yeah.
But God protected me through this stuff, because those guys were in worse spiritual condition than I was. And I wanted to be like them. And we'll talk about this more as we go on today. But seeing what their lives were like, seeing behind the curtain, as you've kind of found, this kind of a broken souls.
I knew one person when I moved to Los Angeles. She was an actress, still an actress today. Has been in lots of movies, worked with all kinds of directors, Tim Burton, and on down the list. And from right out of high school, she just started booking like major films, and I was always impressed by that. So I went and stayed with her, and I remember seeing how people treated her, and I was like, googly eyes, like, this is what I want to do. I want this level of fame and respect. And so I quickly got a manager and an agent, and pursued that whole world. And it was really interesting, the deeper that I climbed into that world. Same sort of thing that you were witnessing from sort of an outside perspective. Here's all these guys with all the success, and it's like, it's not satisfying. And I was noticing that as well, and had many experiences. In fact, a friend of mine, real close friend of mine, that was really starting to just book a lot of TV shows, was really had a place in Beverly Hills, had a lot of things that I was like aiming at. And I hung out with him, seemed like a nice guy. He was very, very adamant about his Buddhism, and, always trying to talk about how cool his life was and this and that. And 2 days after we hung out, he ended up hanging himself in his apartment. And that just rocked my world. Like, why? Yeah. Why did you do that? Like, I don't understand. That there was no point to that. Like, you had all these things and so I think in the back of my mind, God was constantly just that still small voice. This isn't what I have for you. This isn't the plan. And God never left me. That, if I think back over my experience and I look back, I can see the hand of God constantly waiting, talking with me, dealing with me, showing me, and allowing me that space, not being overly, forceful or anything like that. And he waited for the right moment and won my heart back.
Amen.
So praise God that you went, but then were able to come back to God. Do you think that is the normal trend? Do you think that's a safe assumption? Let's go to this guy and this guy and this guy because we can learn all the ways of doing things. Do we have to go to these places in order to learn the skills? Because a lot of young people, they think they need to go to the world or to these guys to become the best, right? Whatever we define as the best in order. And then they say, well, maybe at some point I'll come back to God or come back to ministry or come back to whatever. Do you think that is consistent and what most people do is they leave and they come back?
I think it's a very rare thing. And from what I have experienced with even the people that I was very close with and friends with and shared a lot of truth with when I came back, one, maybe, that was kind of in our inner circle of people that ended up coming and completely leaving that lifestyle and jumping into a life with God. And, it's not it's not a very common thing, and it's kind of like, do you want to run that risk? I think that's a risk.
Yeah, it is.
That you don't come back from that. And so I wish that we would build more of a mindset of our young people, like, look, no matter what you do, that is a means to share the gospel. And if you have a talent in X, Y, or Z, like, there are so many ministries that need help. I mean, I've worked in all sorts of different production companies in Los Angeles. I don't know if you ever spent time in production companies, but there is a waiting list to work in a production company. Like, people will literally sweep the floor for $10 for a 12-hour day for nothing. And they call it an intern, right? So they can legally get away with not paying them. And they'll do that for years just to get the opportunity to go and work for them. Why do we not have that for the workers for God?
Right.
We have a lot of talent in our church, but it's like we're funneling the talent to go and work on the world's content and the world's stuff, and then we are left to, you know, sort of scramble and try to have enough people to do the work. But, you know, I truly believe that it's a heart issue, and we have to also just be open with our hearts to God's leading, and that's probably the primary reason why people go there.
Yeah, and we have kind of been sold a bad bill of goods, in the sense of young people are being taught to, through social media and movies and television, to idolize these things.
Looks fun.
It looks fun. It leads to self-exaltation, right? We want to be on stage. We want to be the stars. And not everybody feels this way, but you find that the most people that go to Los Angeles, they have the personality type that they want to be the big one. So we're really trying to talk to those people who have that mindset.
If you liked this clip, it's actually a short segment from a full episode that you can see on our main YouTube channel, Amazing Discoveries, or go to our own platform, which is adtv.watch, to view the full episode. We'll see you in the next one.